It's noon, and you are at the Democrats of Greater Tucson, the place to be for all Democrats. And I'm Joe D., your host. We're so glad to have you today, and we have a wonderful speaker. We have Tucson City Council member Nikki Lee. And she says about her campaign, I have the privilege of serving as the City of Tucson Ward 4 Councilwoman since 2019. When my husband and I decided to raise our family in Tucson, we did it because we fell in love with this city. But even with a master's degree in business and technology, I had a hard time finding a local-based job here. I'm running for re-election to the Tucson City Council because I want to provide better opportunities for people at all levels in our city. That includes supporting local entrepreneurs and small businesses, creating a strong, diversified economy and job market, and helping our community realize growth opportunities in a sustainable way. I hope you'll join me in my vision for a smarter, stronger, more sustainable Tucson. Nikki, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to come today and the opportunity to connect with everyone. So I'll just share my screen. I just have a couple of slides, like I said, just to keep me on track, because sometimes I get excited and I lose track of time, and I don't want to do that today. So many familiar faces are on the call today, so it's really great to be able to connect with all of you. Before I jump into what I wanted to share, just because I've known so many of you for so many years now, just an update on the family. My oldest is 16 now and driving the streets of Tucson. So, you know, he went through training, all should be well there, but we do have a driver out there now. And my middle kid is 14 and my youngest is now 10. And when I started this process, my youngest was, I think, about 4. So my kids have kind of grown up in front of many of you all who've been paying attention and following our newsletters and whatnot. So, but everyone is well, and we're loving what we're doing. So just want to share a little bit about where I was at when I came into office in 2019. So this was my platform. A lot of it's still going to be the same moving into this 2023 re-election year, but really focused on the core services that we have for the city, the things that are our primary responsibility, which is our roads, first responders, and public safety, and our parks. So those are really key. And during the pandemic, a lot of those things and our ability to maintain those services with staffing levels has been challenged. So those continue to be a focus area for me. But again, going in, I wanted to be laser focused on what are our core services and how do we do those things really well and deliver good results for you all and for all of us in the city of Tucson. Also, as was stated in the introduction, really focusing on small businesses, entrepreneurs, how do we capture the ideas and innovation in the city of Tucson and help those businesses grow and thrive and hopefully create more opportunities for us and our families here, as well as attracting newer opportunities, which we have been able to do pretty well around companies that align with our values as a city around sustainability, like American Battery Factory, which will be bringing in thousands of jobs and $1 billion of economic development, which is pretty great, and creating a lot of opportunity for batteries and renewable technology. Also focusing on a smarter Tucson, really thinking about preparing our workforce for the future with automation, with all of the changes that are happening in our workforce. How do we position ourselves to be able to attract those businesses and provide opportunities for our folks here in Tucson? And how do we look at utilizing technology to improve our city services? And that has gotten even more important after the pandemic with staffing numbers, and it's hard to get vacancies filled sometimes. So how can we supplement technology and enable our folks to do more when we aren't able to fill some of those key positions that we need to be able to fill? And also looking at how we can connect our city with smart and sustainable transportation, and just really embracing and leaning into smart city technology where it makes sense. And last and certainly not least is really looking at doing all the things that we talked about in a sustainable way. And I think we've done a really good job on that front with looking at climate action, looking at growth in the city through the lens of sustainability. And that continues to be a really difficult balance, but we work really hard to make sure we're not compromising on one for the sake of the other. And sort of fundamental to the bottom of all of this is just trying to be as accessible and responsive as possible to constituents. I don't always make every single email that comes in my inbox, but I try really hard to make sure everyone feels heard, because that's really important. So that's where I went into 2019 and into 2020. And so just some of the first term areas of focus and accomplishments that I just wanted to talk about today is really our pandemic response. As you noticed on the last slide, nothing on there was about dealing with a pandemic. And I know none of us were thinking going into 2020, we would be dealing with a pandemic, but that really took a lot of energy, a lot of focus off of the core mission and the core platform going into office. But my colleagues and I did as best as we could to advocate for the health and wellness of our community, and making sure that as we got federal investment dollars like CARES Act funding, we were putting those right into the hands of our community members to help with rental assistance, eviction prevention, utility assistance, all of the things that we knew people needed because their lives were so drastically impacted. So that took up a lot of the first couple of years. I also led in the area of cybersecurity. I came into office and immediately had meetings with our IT folks to understand our cybersecurity posture, because as it is, if something were to happen and we were to get hacked, they can actually hold some of our systems ransom and request millions of dollars to give us the keys back to our systems. We've got 911 communications, public safety, all kinds of really critical infrastructure that can be impacted. And so I helped us make sure that we were having the right conversations, the right insurance to help us out if that day came. And last year that did happen to us. We did have an issue, we did have a breach, and fortunately we had been having these conversations and being better positioned to respond to that when that unfortunately did happen, but it was pretty minor considering some of the other cybersecurity attacks that we have out there. And I will be continuing to be that voice on the council to make sure we're well positioned there. Thanks to the voters, at about 70% voting yes for Proposition 411, we will be resurfacing or touching every single neighborhood street in the city over the next 10 years. So that is huge. When I first took office, I had folks reach out to our office and say, I haven't had anything done to the street in front of my car for 40 years. So I know this is really important for folks. This is going to be a game changer for us to be able to actually touch every single surface street on the neighborhood side and get those dollars out. So I think that was a real signal by the voters that there's trust in the council and mayor and what we're going to be able to do. So right now we are putting the strategy together to start kind of a worst first approach and start getting out there and fixing the roads. We also, in addition to that, actually prior to that, had allocated $15 million a year annually to our collector streets, because we kind of had a gap. We have the big RTA projects, we have our neighborhood streets now that we're resurfacing, and we wanted to focus on the collector streets. And so we have appropriated $15 million from the general fund for those road repairs and updates. We also funded police and fire academies, bringing in about 150 new folks in those areas. When I talked to the fire department, 15 years ago, they would get about 2,000 people applying for a fire academy, and now, or about 2,000, and now we get about 200. So filling these critical positions is getting harder and harder to do, and that's nationwide. But that continues to be a focus area, because I'm sure all of you would like to know when you call 911, we'll be able to respond with the proper personnel. So that continues to be a priority in funding those academies and doing that recruitment. We did a really great job of investing in our 911 call center. We put $8 million into that. I don't know if you've ever been able to tour that, but it used to be a small space and people would be in there for very long shifts and very high stress environment with some of the calls that come in. And we were able to invest $8 million and have a separate training space for folks to train in that's much more like the real world call center when they get out there. And that helps with understanding if a person is going to work out and be able to stay there after the months of training that they go through to be able to be a call taker. So that was a very, very good project for us and for our employees. And that rolled into the $90 million that we've made in capital improvements around public safety. And soon we will have a Southeast Police Annex that the voters approved. And that's going to be another project that we're really excited to bring online and have hopefully faster response times for the Southeast side of town because we're pretty geographically separated. Also, we were able to help about 9,800 households in Tucson and South Tucson by distributing $53 million in federal rental assistance funds. That's been key to focusing on eviction prevention and keeping people housed, and $10 million in low barrier shelter housing, which, as you all know, there's still a lot of work to do to address homelessness in our community, and that remains a top priority for mayor and council. And water sustainability has continued to be incredibly important. We continue to have ongoing water conversations about leaving water in Lake Mead to contribute to the overall health of the water and Colorado River and Lake Mead, and continuing to make sure we're putting Tucson in the best position to thrive as we continue to look at water actions as the lake continues to get lower and lower. And that feeds into a very big accomplishment for the city of Tucson. In our last mayor and council meeting, we passed our climate action and adaptation plan. We had about 5,000 folks, some of them may have been you, who participated in the process of putting that plan together. And that is really, as the mayor talks about, going to put us on the map to get even more federal funding in the door for the city of Tucson so that we are able to continue to build out infrastructure and prepare ourselves to be a resilient city here in the desert for decades to come. So, those are just some of the higher level accomplishments or things that we have been focused on in my office. I have been focused on personally, and mayor and council together. We have a really great, solid team have been able to focus on and continue to move forward. And there is a lot of work to do in all of these areas as we continue moving forward. But I think we have a really great team of Democrats, and I feel very optimistic about our future. So those are the things that I've been working on, that we've been working on. And as was stated, this is an election year for myself and my colleagues, and we are all in the process of getting our signatures to get on the ballot. So we have until the first week of April to finish that up. So I will just put a call out to anyone who lives within the city of Tucson to go to this link right here. If you're able to, I'll put them in the chat as well afterwards. And at a minimum, if you live in the city, you'll definitely be able to sign the mayor's petition if you haven't already. And if you're in Ward 4, you can sign mine. If you're in Ward 1, you can sign Lane's. And if you're in Ward 2, you can sign Paul's. Those should all come up for you when you log in to eQual here. And then I am also running clean with our public matching funds. So we're not taking any corporate money of that kind. So in order to qualify for that, similar to the state legislature, we have to collect 200 donations of $10 or more from folks who live inside the city of Tucson limits. And don't worry, if you live in the county, I understand that everything that we do inside the city absolutely impacts you all, because you come here to shop, you come here to do all the things that you do. And the work that we do definitely impacts everyone in the county. And we are able to take donations from outside the city, and those do get matched as well, which is really super helpful. So I'll put these in the chat. And I know this went kind of quick, but I did share I have to be off at 30 after today. So I wanted to make sure I had plenty of time to connect and answer any questions anyone may have. I'm just trying to get my last
Nikki,
slide here.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And we'll set up some questions for you. Our first question is from Barbara Warren. Barbara, unmute yourself and let's hear your question.
Hi, Nikki. This is an incredibly and wonderful presentation, and I may have missed some of this in the large number of things that you presented, but I wanted to ask you about two problems within our city. I live north central. A lot of drag racing and as we know, serious accidents and some people being killed on the roads because of that. So one problem is how do we deal with that? The other problem is there's a lot of places, including in my neighborhood, where there's no sidewalk. And we have to walk over really bad gravel to get to the grocery store. There are a lot of places in town where there's these gaps. And I'm wondering if the city can do anything about dealing with these two issues.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, Barbara. On the drag racing, I absolutely know what you're talking about there. I live off of Houghton, and there's an area in Houghton and Kolb, which is just really heavily impacted by that issue. So we have had a couple instances where the county and the city and other jurisdictions, other federal agencies have partnered up to do kind of some, I don't know what the right word is, but they work together as a team and they identify intersections, and they're actually looking at social media to hear when these events are supposed to happen, where they're gathering up and try to get ahead of it as best as possible. I think that, we had a task force around this as well recently because it's gotten so bad. And then there's another issue that they take over intersections. So we had one in my ward several months ago where there was a whole intersection of cars that just decided to gather up in the middle of the intersection and shut the road down. And that's obviously a major issue. So our folks are doing as best as possible to gain intelligence ahead of time to see if they can get in front of it and prevent those things from happening. And if you continue to see certain areas and you want to, email me and let me know what those are, I can make sure that our police chief knows where those problem areas continue to be, just in case they haven't been alerted to that yet. And on the second one, Barbara, the good news is that federal law requires anytime we touch a road. So if we're going to go out and resurface something, if we're going to do anything, we have to make sure we have ADA accessibility covered as part of our work with the road. So over time, I know that we'll be able to get sidewalks where they're not sidewalks. But if you want to send me a specific location, I can also make sure that folks are going to take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Steve Early, you have a question.
Why does the city of Tucson fail to enforce regulations that y'all have already passed and long in the past? And I'm talking about private owned home or property owners in the city that do not maintain their property, do not fence it as required by provisions, and do not post it. And why doesn't the city do something? It's not that big of a job to go around and see who's not in compliance. And if you want me to do it, I'll do it for free.
Steve, if you could, I'll put my email address in the chat. If you can give me specifics on where you're talking about, you seeing the issue. We do have a code enforcement department. The challenge is we don't have as many staff members in that department as we are trying to get. So we have a backlog that we're trying to work through as well. So if you can send me, addresses, information that would be helpful, we can make sure between my team and I that we get that over to the right folks in code enforcement and try to figure that out for you.
Great. Let's see, Susie Anderson, you have a question.
Yeah, the question is, you're going to do curbside recycling of even compost? And when do you start picking up the plastics? It's Ward 6. Steve Kozachik is now sending to California. Are they going to start soon?
Yeah, great questions on that, Susie. I know that our composting program is part of the climate action plan that we need to explore and look at feasibility and how we're going to roll that program out. The climate action plan itself is kind of an overarching framework. And then within that, there's still so much work to do to take each of those pieces, understand how we're going to implement it, how we're going to fund it, and kind of prioritize how we're actually going to execute that plan. So that is one piece of it. And then understanding the plastic pickup, so we're not all driving over to Steve's office, is definitely a part of that, and figuring out how we can scale that beyond just the Ward 6 office. So all those will be studied and problem solved so that we can start to implement those, because those will be really great programs to scale.
Mike Bryan, I bet you have some questions from the chat room.
So Jenna Segal actually had the same question about the curbside pickup of organic waste. It sounds like there's no set date for when that's going to commence.
Correct. I'm really excited about that one as well. I know that we're going to have to figure out how to actually build a program that is going to work. So there's a lot of logistics we're going to have to figure out, but that is one of the recommendations in the plan, and we'll be prioritizing it and figuring out.
So hold the line and keep your ear to the street. Rod Norrish wants to know if street improvements will include any safety improvements, and if so, what improvements are planned, if any, for pedestrian traffic safety?
Yes, Prop 411, 80% of the improvements, 80% of the projects are going to be actual road pavement preservation, pavement related work, and 20% are going to be safety related improvements. We have a committee right now. Every ward office has appointed a person to sit on that committee, and they are determining kind of the plan of attack, if you will, for that, with the worst first approach. So we're just in the very early stages on planning. We don't have a lot of specific named projects just yet, but that's the framework. 80-20 worst first is how we're approaching it.
Excellent. Andrea Kennedy asks if you're aware of any plans to repair or resurface 5th Street from Country Club to Wilmot, which is apparently a real problem.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head about a specific project there. But if you all would be so kind as to send those questions directly into my team and I at ward4@tucsonaz.gov, we'll get you a definite answer on those to the best of our ability.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for coming today. We know you have a busy day, so we just all want to give a big round of applause for your being here today. So thank you, Nikki. And very best of luck to you in the election.
Thank you. I couldn't find my unmute button to save my life. I scrolled over for just a moment to grab the link to go to eQual and sign the petition for the mayor, myself, Lane, or Paul, if you live in the city limits. And then if you've not already done a $10 donation to our campaign, we would very much appreciate that, just to help us qualify for matching public funds. So thank you so much for the introduction or the invitation.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us, Nikki.